All right, here we go. I'd like to do a short little message here. I want to read the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. It says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government peaceably for a redress of grievances. So this is the first law of, the Bill of Rights. And it's talking about freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom to assemble. This is the foundation of our freedoms, liberty that the government of the United States was founded on. And we have enjoyed for 244 years, something like that. So, we have the right to freedom of speech, and we have the right to freedom of religion, and we have the right, to the freedom of the press. So, in a sense, the internet is kind of like, in a sense, it's almost like being like a reporter or something. You're publishing to the world, but it doesn't say unless there's a flu. So this is, one of the bedrocks of our government is to the freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. I mean, if you can go to a grocery store, then you can go to church. If they have this totally ineffective 6-foot rule, then we'll sit 6 feet apart if it makes them happy. Or we could have open air meetings. It's not social distancing, it's spatial distancing. So the whole idea of the 6-foot apart rule is if you were to cough, medical experts say it travels 6 feet through the air. And if you were to sneeze, it could travel up to 13 feet. So you wear this little thing over your mouth, and if you cough, it won't travel 6 feet, theoretically. That's in the best case scenario if there's no current in the air, which there always is. Almost always. It's almost impossible to have no airflow whatsoever. This is a microscopic organism. It could probably travel for miles, for hours before it stops, existing. I mean, sunlight, they say, kills it within minutes. But indoors, if you cough, it's going to travel. And even if you don't, if you're just breathing, it's going to go in the air. So, I guess my whole point is that pastors in the United States, preachers, Christians, any Christians out there, if you have a pastor, maybe you could gently and kindly and respectfully suggest that we have open air meetings. Or you simply open your church and we do their little 6-foot rule thing, if that's their big thing. I mean, it's utterly pointless because it's going to circulate in the air. 80% of the people never get sick. That's what they said. That's what the doctor said. They have little to no symptoms whatsoever. They can go around spreading it and never get sick their entire life. So, that means 80% of the population has a natural immunity to it anyway. Or they get sick. So why would I need a vaccine if I already have a natural immunity to it? I never got sick. That's insane. You can't impose a vaccine on people who are never going to get sick from it anyway. And the vaccine is very dangerous because it's being produced faster than any other vaccine has ever been produced by years. And you could be potentially infecting people with a deadly virus that will kill them or make the other virus worse. Or, there's all different possibilities. But so I don't believe they should have the right to impose a vaccine on us, certainly. Seems how 80% of the people never are going to get sick anyway. They already have natural antibodies, they have an immune system, never going to contract any kind of sickness from it, Like, but this whole 6-foot rule thing is based on the idea that if you cough, it can travel 6 feet. So you go to the store, you're supposed to stay 6 feet away from each other. So why can't you go to church and stay 6 feet away from each other? Just space out the seats. I mean, it's not going to work anyway, because if you breathe, it's a microscopic organism. It's airborne. It gets in the air, and the air circulates throughout the entire building, throughout every room. There are air currents. And this whole idea that we're all going to go in a straight line everywhere we go and follow each other's path is the worst thing you would ever want to do. Because now you're coming right after the person in front of you. As they exhale, you're walking, you're breathing in their air, right where they were. So if they are breathing out this microscopic virus, you're going to breathe it in because you're right on their path. So I don't understand the whole idea of, arrows everywhere. I guess the idea is, you're not going to pass each other within a foot or two, but you're still breathing in that person's air. That's why these ships, everyone was getting infected. Like, it went from one guy to like 700 people on the ship because it goes through the air ducts. These people were in quarantine. They were in their rooms for a week or two, and they all started getting sick because it's traveling through the air vents. It circulates. It's microscopic. It's so light. I mean, yes, a cough can propel it 6 feet, or sneeze even further, but there's always air current in every room. And so, to me, it's a pointless rule, but, if that's what makes the government happy so that we can actually go to church, fine, we'll sit 6 feet apart. I don't understand why every preacher in America is just rolled over. Like, so let me get this straight. You can go to the weed store and buy dope. You can go to the liquor store and buy vodka and whiskey, which kills like 20,000 people a year drunk driving. But you can't go to church. That's not essential? Well, that's what's been keeping me off drugs and alcohol for like 40 years. I mean, my faith isn't dependent on going to church, but church is essential. At least sometimes, not every minute or every day, but it's part of our faith. And there are ways to do it that would, satisfy their totally ineffectual and unnecessary 6-foot rule. So why isn't any preacher in America saying, come on over? We'll just space it out if that's what makes them happy. I mean, you can do everything else spacing it out, so why can't you go to church and do the same thing? I don't have a problem with that. It's better than not going at all. Or we could have open air meetings. But, they're taking away the freedom of speech. They're taking away the freedom of religion. And there's no one even disagreeing, hardly. Everyone's just saying, okay. It's like, no, it's not okay. It's not necessary. It's not accomplishing anything, because this thing's going to spread throughout the whole human population until we acquire an immunity to it. And 80% of the people already have one. That's why they don't get sick. So, I think if you have a health issue, underlying health problem, or a weak immune system, then you should stay away from people. You should stay home, but to bankrupt the entire country is not going to help the healthcare system. To make the 90% of the people who don't need medical attention not work is not an answer. You will bankrupt every state government. You will bankrupt your country. I mean, they're letting prisoners out of prison because they might get the flu. people in prison are stabbed, beaten, raped, and murdered all over this country. But they're worried about them getting the flu. I mean, I can see a very old person or someone with some kind of health problem. Yeah, you can't protect them, and they're not a risk to the public. But, the point is, we should be allowed to go to church. I mean, if you can go smoke dope and get drunk, if that's essential, we have every right in the world to go to church. And we should exercise our freedom of speech. These preachers in America should say, yes, come to my church. We'll space it out, but we're still going to have church. But, it's a pointless demand anyway, because this thing's going to circulate. It's microscopic, it's airborne, it floats through the air, and 80% of the people are going to carry it. And if you get tested, you've got no symptoms, you go get tested. They say, oh, you're carrying it. Go into quarantine right away. So you go home for 2 weeks, you never get sick, then you go back to work. Well, it didn't just magically disappear because you stayed home for 2 weeks. You're still carrying it. You're still spreading it. You will continue to spread it because you're asymptomatic. You will never get sick. 80% of the people. It's so mild they didn't even know they had it, or they don't feel anything at all. So you could potentially have millions of people all over the United States spreading it, and there's no way to stop that. Making them stay home from work for 2 weeks does nothing. Doesn't magically make the virus non-existent in their body. And as they walk around and breathe, it will continue. And the same people that are making us wear masks are the people for 3 months who said we didn't need one. And the masks we are using don't work because they're not airtight. So as long as you're breathing out and that's being released into the air, it's not working. So everyone's wearing masks that don't work for pretty much nothing. I mean, it'll stop a cough or a sneeze, but you're still releasing that as you breathe out. And it's still floating through the air. So, you can wear a mask, but certainly we have to have the freedom of speech. We have to have the freedom to assemble. And if we don't, they could what if they say, oh, the virus is dangerous. You can never go to church ever again. You would be assembling in a group. Who knows? You're like, if that could happen. They could just say, yeah, no more crowds. I mean, they're trying to outlaw going to a stadium, an outdoor stadium. So, I don't know. They can't just outlaw crowds in America forever. I don't see how that's going to work economically. The governments are going to bankrupt themselves. And in all likelihood, this was a virus that was being studied. SARS-like influenzas were being studied in a security level 4 bioweapons lab in Wuhan, China. SARS-like influenzas, flus. And it was probably released. It's so contagious, a guy he never gets sick, even if he contracts it. So he leaves the lab, he's walking around Wuhan, spreading it. It takes, a week or two for anyone to get sick, and then 80% of the people never get sick anyway. So they just keep spreading it everywhere, all these people that are contracting it. So by the time a bunch of people get sick, it's, 3, 4 weeks, 5 weeks later, and 80% of the people never get sick, so they're just spreading it everywhere. So this was released from a lab, hopefully unintentionally, but they were studying this, these types of diseases. So it's, I don't think it's a coincidence that the very lab that was studying this type of thing, that's where it originated. And I guess my point is that this virus will probably circulate throughout the human population. It's in every country of the world. What are you going to do? Just shut down international travel for years? Because every country in the world has it. They can always fly back to America and spread it. And people contract it. They never get sick. They're spreading it for weeks and months. Never going to get sick. Just keep spreading it. You're going to quarantine the entire 80% of the American population that's never going to get sick? Is that your plan? Because that's not practical. You won't have a government. You won't have any tax revenue. You won't have an economy. This is not a feasible plan. You cannot do this. This is mindless. And this is, mismanagement by government officials. God didn't create this virus, and God didn't create this poverty. This is man-made mismanagement. And the governor of New York, he pretends like he's this great humanitarian. The governor of New York has agreed with the law to murder babies at 9 months old, like days before they would be born. They passed the law in New York State. June 11th, I believe, 2019, they passed this law. And he was smiling and they were cheering. The murder of babies, premeditated murder of innocent children, innocent babies, human beings that have never done right and wrong, never committed sin, never done anything. Innocent children, innocent babies. He was all happy about it. This is the governor of New York who's so concerned about people getting the flu and dying. They passed a law that is infanticide. And now their solution to this flu that cannot be controlled and will probably go around the whole world for years and infect, half the human population before, hardly anyone gets sick anyway because there's such an immunity built up to it. But, he's shut down everything. They shut down all theaters. I've been in theaters where there's 15 movie theaters, and there's like 20, 30 people in each theater that has 200-300 seats. They're creating a global depression. They're creating global poverty. There's 3 billion people in the world right now on stay-at-home orders. It's really don't work orders. And I'm not a genius, but I'll tell you right now, any government in this world, there's about 210 governments in the human population of 7.7 billion people. And any government that does not allow its people to work and support themselves is going to be faced with a few options. Either we support the population or we let them starve because we won't let them work and support themselves. And guess what? We have no tax revenue. Do you know the statistics of what's going on right now? It's like 75% of economic activity in the United States is gone, non-existent. You can't do that. You won't have any money. All these states will go bankrupt. They'll have to lay off, 60, 80% of their employees, which will create even more unemployment. These governors shutting all this down, they're going to have no tax revenue to do anything to help sick people or unemployed people or people who need food stamps or homeless people. Forget about homelessness. I mean, in the United States, if you don't have money, and they're ordering you not to work. You could have had money. You never got sick. You're healthy. You're strong. You can work. You want to work. You got to support yourself because the government won't help you. And in the United States, if you don't have any money, you don't have any rights at all. You have no rights to shelter, no rights to food, no rights to health care, no rights to anything. I lived in Las Vegas for over 4 years. I saw thousands of people with no shelter. There are no shelters. Over 10,000 people, no shelters. And they can't go to the bathroom. They go to the bathroom on the sidewalks. Same thing in San Francisco. Because the businesses, the government won't give them any public restrooms, and the businesses lock them out because they smell so bad. They have no showers, and so they can't get in the bathrooms to even excrete waste, which has to happen a number of times every day. And so these people, they have no right to housing, no food, not even a toilet, and no way to wash themselves. And there's no shelters, and the shelters are filthy, and they're not run by the government. They're usually run by, like, Christian or Catholic charities. So that's why people are terrified, because if I don't make money, the government's not going to help me. If you don't have any money, you don't get shelter, you don't get food, you don't get health care, you don't get transportation. It takes a certain amount of money to even be able to get back and forth to work, provide housing, and also, this don't work order, they're calling it a stay-at-home order. It's financial suicide. Basically, the governments of the world have collectively lost their mind and decided to commit financial suicide and bankrupt their governments and the people of their countries, because they were told that these models, there were millions of people who were going to get sick. But that never happened. Their models were flawed. And, we have to go to church. We have to have freedom of speech. We have to work. Work is not an option. The Bible says, if any man will not work, neither should he eat. It doesn't say if any man cannot work, he shouldn't eat. It's if you can. If you're an able-bodied human being and you can work, you should be willing to work and try to support yourself. It's people who refuse to work that, we're not going to take care of you if you're not willing to work. But so it's a misinterpretation to say, if you don't work, you shouldn't eat. No, it's not what it says. It says if you're not willing to work. So, but anyway, people need to work. And that's how the government gets all the tax revenue to pay for the health care and the food stamps and the public housing and the shelters and, all this government assistance that poor people need, because the wages have been utterly decimated. We gave all our jobs to communist China. We de-industrialized the United States. We're totally reliant on the world for almost everything we have. We've made ourselves very weak. And a consumption-based economy is an extremely weak economic model. It's foolish. It's ignorant. If you want to be the superpower of the world and have the most powerful military in the world and the most powerful government, that's great. I'm all for it. But you need a strong economy to do that. And you need an economy that's self-reliant. You cannot shut down a consumption-based economy and expect to maintain, a $22 trillion GDP, the largest economy in the world, 160 million jobs. It's all based on jobs that only work if there's a lot of money, everyone's working, everyone's got discretionary spending. A lot of these jobs are discretionary. They're based on discretionary spending in a consumption-based economy. It's a good chance that because, Germany has, 25% manufacturing base and China is the largest manufacturer in the world, they can produce their way out of this eventually. It could take many years. But the United States is a consumption-based economy. 70% of our economy is based on consumption. So these governors shutting down these states could create a massive depression. The United States will quite possibly not be the economic superpower of the world anymore. And if you want to talk about the morality and ethics of it all, what about the millions of people all over the world that are going to starve to death when the largest economy in the world that was purchasing everything from everyone drops down to like 30-40% of what it was? How do you think that's going to affect all these other countries that they don't have any savings? They make like $3 a day in India. And now they have no savings, no food, no money, no housing, nothing. Like, people are going to starve to death all over the world. This, I'm sure America will do better than most countries, but this is going to have ramifications for potentially years. You've got to get this country running. You've got to get these people able to support themselves. It's not enough to just have a job. You have to have a job that actually pays enough to live, to pay for housing, transportation, just so you can get back and forth to work. So, yes, this is a tragic national emergency, this healthcare situation. So is 50 million people unemployed. You're going to have a lot more problems than the flu. And you're still going to have the flu. The only difference is you're going to have a government that's bankrupt. It has half the tax revenue or less than it did before to help anyone. That's not a solution. And the preachers in the United States should open their doors, stand up, and say, yeah, come on in. We'll space out. Not going to do any good anyway, but if that's their rule, no problem. But if Costco and Walmart and weed stores and liquor stores can be open, the churches can be open. And I think preachers in America have a responsibility to stand up and stand up for yourself. Stand up for your beliefs. And any Christian out there who hears me, if you go to church somewhere, just talk to your pastor, be nice, friendly, polite, respectful. Say, let's have church. It's not against the law. It's not against the law to go to work. It's not against the law to have church. It's not against the law to have a difference of opinion. You can be humble, you can be polite, respectful. You say, well, I disagree. This is illogical. It's not a solution. You're going to create massive problems in the United States and in countries all over the world. They're gonna rue the day they chose to handle it this way. And this was man's doing. This poverty, the starvation, the food shortages, the unemployment, that's all the third seal. And that's man created. Governments blundering, misstepping. And so keep in mind, don't blame God on this. And even the virus itself, I don't believe it's certainly not God-made. I think it's something they were studying for, potentially to use as a weapon. Like they do that stuff. So, in any case, we need to get back to work. We need to be able to go to church. I encourage Christians to exercise their freedom of speech and their freedom of religion. And it can be done within their rules. I don't see any, there's nothing different between being in a church building and being in a supermarket. You go to the supermarket, they don't flip out on you, say it's illegal, because you have to have food, right? And all you got to do is try to stay 6 feet away from people. That's all you got to do. You don't have to wear a mask into the store that doesn't work anyway. It's not airtight. So anyway, Christians should speak up. We respect the government. We're law-abiding. But we still have freedom to say certain things are not the best avenue to take. I love my country. I love the United States. I support the United States government entirely, 100%. USA, number one. All the way, baby. No question about it. But let's make some right decisions for the good of the people, for the general welfare of the people of the United States. So God bless you. Just wanted to get that off my chest. Good. Thank God to let people go back to work. People don't have savings. They can't just sit home and have no money, have no food. You can't outlaw working. It's madness. It's not going to work anyway. It's futile and unnecessary and destructive, detrimental to the general welfare of the population. So, it's my opinion, and I encourage people to speak up. And I love you, and I wish you well. God bless you. In Jesus' name, amen.